that will get us to the point where we're no longer in an uncontrolled response. And I can give you actual experiences from myself during all the days that I was fighting the IRS and other nasty people to save my house, my job, my life, my wife, all this stuff. And there was a point in all of that where all of a sudden I began to realize my emotional body was no longer having an issue with what was going on. And that it opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And one of the biggest ones, of course, was that I was able to move through some of these areas of extreme difficulty, having a complete and total inner understanding about what I was doing. And where this came from, that's another whole nother topic. But it's still something that will happen to the person who's maybe going through it. And in the end, and there's no end to all this, but in the end of your experience in all this, you will discover that you may have gained control over a part of you that before was completely uncontrolled. It just happened. Somebody slapped you and you wanted to kill them or whatever. So these are the little things in life that can be remedied by doing the things that we're getting ready to talk about in our experiences here, which is addressing something in the system that everybody should know about, but not everybody is necessarily willing to address or face. And most people, when it comes to this kind of stuff, are, let's just say, apprehensive at best. Most of them are just plain afraid. And you've always got all these what-if questions that are always on some people's minds about the system. But we're in a time, amazingly as this may sound to you, of being able to deal with the system on our own terms, not on its. And there's been a lot of dialogue about status, citizenship, and property rights and all this other stuff. And because of all of my, I'll just say, experiences in life, I've been able to discern between truth and BS. And everything that's been going on in this present administration, clear back to the days of the founders, has been captured by a group of very bad, very nasty, very dishonest, and even horrible individuals who had things on their own little personal agenda that most people, when they finally start seeing all this, are going to just go, this can't be right, can't be true. Nobody can be this horrible. But you're going to see it, and it's not far down the road. It's been a long time coming. But the documents that are in our history have been jaded. And I'm talking about every one. I'm not saying that there's a single document out there that's 1,000% correct and true. They're either misspelled, miscapitalized, they use words that don't actually apply in the definition that is intended, and it's all been for one purpose. It's a contrived process to keep us stupid, to misguide us, mislead us, control us, tax us, regulate us, license us, and then eat us. If that sounds a little bit crazy, the last part is probably the worst that's going to be exposed. But all I'm trying to do here is my assignment in this particular time in history is to give as many people as is willing to listen, is ready to take a step, to do something in their life to help strengthen that uncontrolled response that everybody has. And if you don't have an understanding completely about it, I'm sure if you sit down and think long enough, or if you just go quietly and sit down and close your eyes and ask the question, what responses in my life do I have that I have no control over at this moment? And I'm pretty sure most of you will be able to find one or two or maybe more. And the remedy, this is the key. The remedy is facing the things in your life that you are responding to without control, especially when they're negative. And the system is full of those. I've asked people, well, have you ever been annoyed or upset by the fact that you got to pay this one agency to buy something you don't need, to put it on something that you don't want it on, and then to be subjected to all of the things that the system thinks is right for the system or for the people, which isn't just for a select few, to keep you under their wing. And I think most of you probably could think of something in your life that this may apply to. And then I might ask the question to that person, have you ever thought about just, you come to a stop sign or a stop light, the light's red, and you're not stopped yet, but there's no cars coming. Have you ever thought about just running it? And they just look at me like, oh, you're kidding? Oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay, I guess you can't. And I went through a period of my time, growth in all of this, when I didn't have anything on that car. I didn't have a license. I didn't have nothing. And I drove it all over the country. I drove it in and out of a top secret facility that I worked for. And this went on and on and on. Finally, one day, I decided, well, it's obvious that the universe doesn't want to deal with me. So I'm on my way home, and I'm driving up Woodhill Boulevard, and all of a sudden I come to the corner where I make a left-hand turn, and the bank's right there on the corner, and that's where I usually go in and cash my check. And there was a motorbike cop sitting right on my tail, and it was highway patrol because that particular part of town was highway patrol jurisdiction for whatever reason, that main boulevard. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, and the light was red, and there was nobody else around. No cars on the cross, no one looking at me, and that cop is sitting right on my tail, and I'm looking at him right in my rearview mirror. And he's sitting right where my license plate would normally be, and there wasn't one. And all of a sudden, I just said, okay. I gassed it, made the left-hand turn, busted the light, pulled in the parking lot next to the bank, and the cop's still sitting there. He didn't know what to do. And finally, I'm getting ready to get out of my car, and he pulls up next to me and gets off his bike, and he says, "Excuse me, uh, did you see that red light back there?" You know, I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, why did you run it?" I said, "Well, I didn't see anybody coming. Did I run over somebody?" He's looking at me with this stupid look on his face, and I said, "Excuse me, I got to go deposit my check. It's almost time for the bank to close. I'll be right back." And so I walked away from him. He's sitting there looking at me, leaving him. I went into the bank. I cash my check, do all this stuff. I come back out. He's standing there next to the car, and I walk over and he says, "Okay, look," he says, um, "I know who you are." I said, "Okay, what's that got to do with anything?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you'll sign the ticket," because he called in to find out what to do. He said, "If you'll just sign the ticket," he says, I'll let you go, and then you can take care of it." And I looked around and said, "Yeah, well, that's kind of what I've been trying to get somebody to do all the time, so I could take my issue into the courts." Now, most people haven't done the research that I've done. I've got case law from here to the other end of the planet when it comes to the right to travel. And they bring up every kind of crosswise, sideways excuse or a reason for getting that license that you can think of. And they can think of more ways for giving you a ticket if you don't have one. And all of the things that you have that you'll find in our system that require a license is a commercial activity affecting the public. And I think I've made comment about this particular statute. California's got some good ones. They actually have a statute that uh, mandates that the private person. Now listen to the words. They didn't say citizen. They just say private person. And it says, well, if you are not traveling in a commercial capacity, you have no requirement. In fact, you have an obligation to apply for and get an exempt placard from the, it's the Department of, the ones that regulate taxes. Anyway, they said you got to apply, and it's free. But if you don't, if you're a private party and you don't apply for that, and they have to stop you, it's actually a misdemeanor. They can fine you. And I'm like, oh, isn't this crazy? They give you a free plate. All you got to do is apply for it. And if you don't have one and you're doing free travel or you're doing a right to travel, uh, and you don't have the plate, that they fine you. This is nuts. So anyway, I went from that beginning. That was one of my first really goofy cases after the IRS thing, and I took that thing up to the court, the Supreme Court, half a dozen times on all kinds of specific related issues, the right to travel and all that. And the court would not hear it. And so I'm like, okay. And finally the day came, and the judge in the case, he said, he said, you know more about law than any man I ever met. And I said, well, okay, so it's all in the books. He said, yeah, but I guess they don't want to hear your issues, huh? And I said, yeah, it kind of looks that way. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Why don't you just pay a $25 fine? It's more of an aggravation fee than anything, because usually the ticket for 12,500 is like 100 or more. And so I said, he said, and just go get your license and quit messing with this thing. You're wasting your time. And I couldn't agreed with him more at that point. All right, but remember, I spent probably 2 years driving that big blue van with no plate on it all over the country. And so it wasn't like I didn't know that I had the ability to do it without the license and all that. But my wife and everybody else, they were constantly ragging on me. I said, okay, fine, I'll just do it just to get it out of my hair. So I went and got the license, aced it first time through, and then I had a buddy of mine. He wanted to know what I'd been doing about all this right to travel stuff. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you want to go to the law library with me one day, and I'll show you where all this stuff's at. So I get down to the LA Law Library, and I'm just going to show you this because this is how powerful the system is when it comes to their control. We went in, and I said, come on over here. Most of you may not have heard of this. There's a whole volume of books called Deering's Constitution Codes Annotated. And I said, come on. I went over, and I pulled this one out, which had to do with 12,500. That's if you're driving without a license, it's fine, whatever. I opened up the book, which is where I found the case that says exactly what I had the right to do, which was to travel without a license, as long as I wasn't involved in commerce. And I opened it up to the page where 12,500 that case was, and it was gone. They had changed the entire volume of books to get rid of that one section out of that code book. So if you think that this thing hasn't been kind of an uphill run, yeah. But we're at a place now. And because of guys like me and other people that have done some of the most craziest things you can imagine, of learning how to first and foremost get control over that uncontrolled response that you might have when you see a red light going behind you, or when you see a sheriff walk up to your doorstep, or, and I can go down the list. And this is not easy, and it's not simple for the average person. But there's this time right now that is probably one of the most important times in your life, just simply because of the frequencies, the vibrations, and the energy that the earth and the planet and the evolutionary process that man goes through on occasion to get us to another level in our spiritual growth. And believe me, whether you want to or not, it's one of those things that when you finally realize how valuable it is and how important it might be for you and those around you, as you're the example, to take a step into the worlds that we're all ultimately going to be able to experience, which is living in a community where everybody respects everybody. We all have the right attributes of knowing what to do and what not to do. And we have complete control over our emotional, our mental, and our astral, and all those bodies except, we get to the fifth level, and that's another level of freedom. But all those things below that, you can actually develop the attributes of, let's just call it what it is. You'll be a master in your own person. And I don't like the word person so much because the courts have ruled that the word person does not apply to the sovereign. And statutes that employ it do not apply to the statute unless they name the sovereign in specific. And you better name it right because, the king has the right to do whatever he chooses as long as it doesn't necessarily affect the public at large. But he doesn't have the right to go in and do commercial activities and run the rest of the commercial people out of business because most people are going to buy it from the king, and he could probably put a sign out that says, if you don't buy from me, you're in trouble. Well, everybody's going to buy from him with that. So that's just kind of a lead into where we're going with the no trespass sign that's now part of the step that has, I've been given to bring to everybody to help them take a step in the direction towards one of those uncontrolled responses that you may have, which is the fear of the system. And, oh my God, what if somebody comes up and looks at the sign and wants to know something? Okay, that's what you're trying to do, is get somebody to ask you something, especially if it's the sheriff. And if you can't do it in a simple way, there's this thing called 911. And each and every one of you, most likely are at some level of your own discomfort when it comes to addressing the system, especially telling the local sheriff that you have the right to travel without a license, or that you have a right to your domicile without paying property taxes, and that you're not a taxpayer, you're not a subject of DC. You've got all these little things that are attributes that the system created for one purpose, to control you and to see if it can get you to succumb to its controls, rules, and regulations at your expense and to their benefit. But there's one other little piece to all of this, most important. And for those that may not have an understanding or may not even consider it being possible, each and every one of us that are on this call and beyond, we're the sum total of everything we've ever been. And whether you believe in having been here before or not is pretty much irrelevant, because the day will come when that little veil will be drawn. And depending upon your experiences and the things you may be doing specifically in your life to challenge the things in your life that you have already been part of, which is the key. That's one of the keys of all this. The things that you hate the most are something you most likely have been involved in a previous time. And that's why you're so keen on having terrible responses to this nasty thing that you're trying to kill, if you could. But you find yourself you can't, because it wasn't created for you by you. It was created by the energies of the entire system that you're now living part of. And it's there for one reason, to see if you got it, to step up and face it, and then learn the truth about not only it, but about you. So this no trespass, this entering foreign soil, which is really the first really step for anybody that I know that might want to take a look and see if they can get over that uncontrolled response in this time, would be to take that sign, put your state seal on it, put a phone number or an email or something, because you're putting on there that you want, you got whoever it is that wants to come and visit me, you need to make an appointment, because this is not open for business. It's not open to the public, and neither the sheriff or anybody else has the right to trespass on that soil. And the reason it's foreign, which is the most interesting part about this, there isn't a piece of land in this whole country that wasn't won by and belongs to the people as citizens of the state. Now, those words are written in more than one document. And so the allodium belongs to the people, not to the government, not to the sheriff's office, not to the local judge, or anybody else for that matter. And because you're one of those people, you have the right to that highest title, which is also allodium. And there are some words in Noah Webster's that may not suit some people's ideas about what they think the word should mean or what it should say. And all I can tell you is this: there is not a single dictionary or statute written anywhere in this system that's 100% correct according to the people and their rights in it. They've all been jaded. The groups like the Jesuit order, they have messed up everything. Even Noah Webster's 1828 has got bad wording and misstatements in it. And I never would even assume that Noah Webster was 100%, because he's not. And there's a lot of things in there that he should have corrected and didn't. And the spelling, the capitalization and all is one of the most important. And if you think that this is just some half-hearted little comment about that, the founders, they weren't dummies. And some of the things that they did were outside the norm when it comes to the average person today and their thinking and how they think things should work. But their words pretty solid, and the principles that they identify, are irrefutable when you get your head wrapped around it. And of course, one of the things that was most important with all that was the use of certain words and the capitalization of that word, specific, citizen, throughout the original Constitution is capitalized everywhere you see it. So is the word people. So is the word rights. And as crazy as it is, they just, in their mind, put in that phrase, citizen of the United States, in Article 1, at a couple of spots, but they weren't talking about the individual. They were talking about the citizen throughout the states wherever he may go, and so that's a general phrase they threw in there. Is it right? No, it shouldn't have been, but they did anyway. But the point is that they clarify it in Article 4, Section 2. And then they obliterated that in the 14th Amendment, which has no constitutional authority to be there. It was not amended in accordance with the law of our amending process. And Madison in the Federalist explains this to pretty good detail. If you can't find an error in the document, what are you going to fix? And you got to show the error. You got to list them. And then we'll decide whether or not it's right or wrong. And the 11th Amendment, which was the first hit on that Constitution, is the evidence of what their intent was, which was to get rid of the sovereignty of this country. And it's a simple read. And then the Chisholm case goes right with it. And you'll discover, if you want to look deep enough, I can point you right to the wording and the group that finally agreed that the 11th Amendment might be okay. I didn't say is. It didn't say it's constitutional. It never used the word. It said that an act of the president is what allowed the 11th Amendment to stand, and it doesn't even say it in those words. So you're going to find, as you go through this little exercise with this no trespass, foreign soil, the soil is allodium to the people. If you're one of them, and the guy that's knocking on your door is a citizen of the U.S., which every stinking one of them have signed under penalty of perjury, either in a government form or an affidavit, a taxing form, or anything else they may have done, including their voter registration, driver's license applications, everything. They all ask you, are you a citizen of the U.S.? Yes, and that's the box you check. So everybody in the system has agreed to be what is commonly known in the natural world as a fictitious entity. Now, there's a section in Title 18 that's pretty pointed on this subject. And if you go in there and look in Chapter 115, I believe it is, which is that's the criminal section of treason and a whole bunch of other stuff, and then look up the word fictitious, you'll find that anybody that puts something in the mail that identifies something that's fictitious, especially when it comes to a name, that's a criminal act. And there's a pretty heavy penalty that goes with it. So I could look at every single employee, sheriff, and anybody else and actually accuse them of being improperly identified and an alien in the state where they're standing. And they have no jurisdiction over that property line where it says foreign soil. Why? Because that soil does not belong to the District of Columbia or any of the individuals who have applied for and acquired a status called anything other than a citizen of the state of your domicile. And there's only one. You can only be domiciled in one state. And the definition for that one's pretty simple. It's a place whenever you're away, you always have the intention of returning. It's the place of permanence. The resident junk that they've shoved down everybody's throat is a temporary, and that's just what it means. So if you're a resident or you have a residence, you're not part of that system. And you're most likely either an alien or a taxpayer, which is still an alien, and everybody in the government has agreed to be just that. So let's just say, for the instance, somebody comes up to your doorstep and says, hey, what's this sign mean? Well, you have an obligation for yourself to learn and understand every word in that document, to know how it applies in the law, and most importantly, to know the status of the person you're talking to. And once you start asking the right questions, like, well, who do you work for? Who pays your salary? What's the form of your salary? You're going to get around to the points that not only is he an alien, but he's a non-registered foreign agent for a foreign corporation. Operating in a sovereign capacity? I don't think so. So this little exercise about this sign is nothing to be afraid of, unless you just get heart palpitations thinking, oh my God, I'm going to put this sign on my front door and somebody's going to come and look at it and I'm going to be in trouble. What's the matter with this? You got to stand up sooner or later. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I posted in, I think it was in Salty's website, and there's a sheriff's handbook in there. And I'm hoping that will make its rounds, because it's half-hearted when it comes to some of the words and things that it uses, but the principles, there's a bunch of Supreme Court cases in there that talk about the rights of the citizen. And that word citizen, I think, is in there like 19 times. And I think there's only one place where they actually used it correctly spelled, uppercase, and citizen of the state. It's in there. So you can do a word search. It's a PDF file. And it's not the oldest sheriff's handbook that I have, but it's the only one I had scanned into my computer. So it's available for those who want to spend a little time looking. And meantime, your little exercise with the seal and the no foreign, or the foreign soil sign is the most important that you could do. And you can take this posting and put it in your car, put it on your dashboard. You can fold it up and carry it in your pocket. You know, this is my ID. Here, you want to talk to me? You make an appointment. It's one of those beautiful little things that it comes to those of us who are interested in helping the whole get themselves in a position where they're standing on solid ground. And this country is solid ground for one class, state citizen. Other than that, you're an employee, or you're a foreigner, or you're an alien. There's no way around it. So there's a lot of history on this, a lot of case law, statutes all over the place. There's some in California statutes specific where it says the sovereignty is in the people. And then we got some cases that say, yeah, the word people and citizen of the state are synonymous terms. And there's just too much of the foundational part of our system that's 100% true and cannot be refuted, no matter how much you try and jade certain words or miscapitalize them or whatever you want to do with that. So, but it isn't about all that. It's about you as an individual. I don't care what you call yourself or how you identify yourself in your bedroom or your back room, but I'll tell you what, when you're in the world with a whole bunch of other souls like you, you might get away with just saying, well, yeah, I'm a human and I'm domiciled on planet Earth. And hey, I can't think of a better way, because that's where we're headed, by the way. There ain't going to be no such thing as a stupid ID or anything else. We're all going to be held to the words that we use, the status that we've claimed, and how we treat our fellow man. And if all those little pieces don't come together and get you into a position where you can actually start getting your own internal evidence, that's the key. And that will set you free. So I don't know how much more I can deal with this outside of giving everybody an opportunity to step up, take that sign, that posting, know that the soil you stand on is alien to any outside entity, any outside, including D.C. or the president or I don't care who it is. It's foreign to the sheriff. He doesn't have jurisdiction to step over that line. He's got to have at least a complaint by two qualified complainants. It can't be he said, she said, or there's got to be evidence of damage that he actually saw or somebody saw and did an affidavit and had evidence of it. This is the common law principles of our system. So don't be afraid. Ask yourself the question. If you are afraid, why? Then that's where you get into that past life stuff. You may find out you were a corrupt sheriff at some point. Now you're standing here in a position of having to deal with the very thing you didn't like or you were part of, and now you hate it. and you're afraid of it. And oh my God. So anyway, I think I about beat this one enough. And unless there's some pertinent questions that need to be asked that I might be able to answer, I'd be more than happy to not surrender, but to yield. Thank you.
Well, Mason, if I might, if you would expound upon this concept of a void act cannot be legally consistent with a valid one, would you expand upon that thought and explain what you were talking about?
The, the legislatures, states and federal, they have specific jurisdictions. And there isn't anything in any of the documents that give them the power or the right to legislate over our rights. And most people recognize them as unalienable. And, yeah, they're God given. And it just happens to be one of the few countries on the planet where those rights actually were set up in the original founding documents for the people. The other country, the only other one I know of is Liberia, and that's only because they took our Constitution and took it there and changed some of the wording in it that we didn't do in ours, but they did. So this statute code rules and things. If you have an inkling about what your rights might be, your right to contract is also immutable, and it doesn't mean you got to write it down on a piece of paper. A verbal contract is just as valid and can be held, uh, to a law standard just the same as one that was written. Of course, it's always nice if you got more than one witness, but the point is that if you don't have any integrity, I don't care what kind of a contract you make. It's not going to stand up. Sooner or later, you're going to get it from the other end. So integrity is number one. If you're an honest, you know what's right and wrong, and all of a sudden the legislature comes along and says all persons. I was, oh, wait a minute. Uh, there's a case on the books, Supreme Court case, and it identifies this word person as not applying to the sovereignty. Well, if you're a citizen of a state, you're part of that sovereignty. And so the statutes that they write don't have any application to you specific, unless you're involved in something affecting the public. So once that gets qualified, somebody has to produce some evidence that you've advertised in a way that would cause the state to be able to write a statute dealing with your commercial activity. And they identify you as any person. So if you're not any person and you're acting in a private capacity, all you got to make sure you don't do is post your private information and anything relative to something you might want to sell to the public in public view. You can put it inside your bedroom, and in fact, there's another principle that goes along with this, and the sheriff, because the sheriff is supposed to be one of us, he's also supposed to be one of the mouthpieces for people who are looking for something that they don't necessarily know who might be able to do it or who knows about some specific thing for their private benefit. And so you go to the sheriff office and, hey, sheriff, I'm looking for let's say in the old days, I'm looking for a blacksmith. Oh, yeah, no problem. Joe and so. He's right down the street there. And, of course, you always see it where there's a big sign out front. So even in that, the guy was subject to a license, subject to the controls of the system. He had to use shoes made out of a certain material. He could only work certain hours of the day. He couldn't interrupt the privacy in the evening after a certain hour, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, he was in a small business, and he was in the downtown area, wherever that might be. But the principle is very simple. If I wanted to find out who in that town or that city or that township or whatever you want to call it that had certain expertise that I'm looking for, I could very simply go to the sheriff's office or pick up the phone and call the sheriff if he's that amenable and just ask him a question. Hey, man, you know anybody that does this or that or this? And he said, yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. In fact, yeah, I had my horse shot, and the guy's fantastic with animals. Well, guess what? See, that the word of mouth is the most valuable, important advertisement that the people have at their free disposal. And no system, no corporate charter, none of that other bull can have any effect over you when you're in that capacity. And the sheriff will protect you at any length when he's in his right mind and knows what his duties are, which is one of the reasons I put that sheriff's handbook in there for people to look at. They go through and do a scan. Look up certain words. Look up the word citizen. See how many times you find it and how many times it's properly identified. Because they've been butchering our system from the beginning. It didn't start yesterday. So you're going to have the discernment to look at something and know, is it right or wrong? But if you don't have the foundational document to verify what you're looking at, then it's just another he said, she said thing. So is there anything else I might be able to give you on that point?
Well, I think that pretty well explains it. Other than perhaps you, um, I mean, I think that that was kind of the basis of the court's decision about the Chevron case, isn't it? That only uh, publicly approved, constitutionally approved laws were the guidelines, even for land and you know, resources, and not statutes approved by government agencies, and they had no bearing um, and no legality, and so that those laws were void and unsustainable.
Well, let me give you a better example than that. Let's get real clear on a point. The people have the right to land in this country. The people do,
Yes,
not aliens, not a citizen of another country. Okay, only the people in their sovereign capacity have the right to hold the allodium title. When the government, state, city, county, whatever, creates a statute or puts it into a code, civil, penal, or whatever, and they change the identity of the title to land, and I happen to know what they've done, when they did it, and what the purpose was. They did it so they could get the land in a marketable condition relative to land speculators, the general real estate industry. And it's actually in one of the California civil codes. So they created the statute and said, okay, we're going to do away with, in effect, all of the ancient titles. Ancient titles. What the hell is an ancient title? Well, if you didn't know that the patent wasn't really the title, then what ancient title could it be if it wasn't that? It might just be a posting and a claim by a sovereign. That's an ancient title. Because in this country, all the patent stuff came with the founders. That's the king's idea of granting lands to, to his subjects is a land patent. And that came with the founders and a lot of other government entities that had allegiance to the crown. And I think one of the things that's depicted pretty well is the Patriot movie, and Mel Gibson was part of that. And the king, I mean the general, and one of his underlings was doing some nasty stuff, and they were in the general's office, and the general was asking them if he could do something like really bad to get rid of this Patriot guy who was a pain in his butt. And he said, well, he said, if I do all this, I'm not going to be well admitted back into my own country with my own people because it's some pretty horrible stuff you want me to do. He said, but I will. He said, so, and he walked over to this big map, and they're looking at this map, and he's looking, he said, how about Ohio? And it's like, okay, but they didn't tell you how he would acquire it, which would be a grant from the crown. And the grant from the crown was a land patent. And this, historically, you'll find it in their historical writings. Well, that that instrument came to this country with the founders and those other people who followed them, and it supposedly has to be signed by the president or the governor of the state. And if you were a citizen, you could acquire this land, and if you applied properly and it was properly surveyed, uh, and you paid a fee, which was the surveyor's costs, you also are prohibited from, you can't market this document or this title now. You can't market the land. You can't speculate it. If you do, and I'm at some point I'm going to post that 1843 statute in the site so everybody can take a look at it, and you will find that they use all the wrong words, miscapitalized, but they tell you one thing in there: it has to be bought with gold and silver. It has to be surveyed, and you have to sign an affidavit that you did not purchase it for any form of speculation. And that if you get caught speculating the land, then you will be not only fined, but you will lose all the money that you got paid, supposedly, from the person you speculated it to, and you lose the title as well. So there's all kinds of little things in our history that are just sitting there waiting for the people to wake up to realize, hey, we're all here together. How are we going to deal with this in a collective? You got to quit fighting amongst ourselves to start with. Well, that's what's coming with this transition, this movement from one 3D to a 5D that everybody keeps talking about. So we're all going to be living here together pretty soon in a cohesive manner, and all this old junk that we've been trying to push under the carpet, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be there waiting for the next round because there's other people that are behind us that are coming along. Same stuff going to happen over and over. And whether you were part of that or not, well, that's up to you to deal with. But it's not impossible. So that Chevron case, I'm not really familiar with it, but I can tell you this much. The Constitution is the law of the land. And if you don't understand what it means and the spiritual implications of the rights that you have acquired as a human on this planet, then those are the things you need to get your head wrapped around. And no law, no statute, no rule, no code can be written that would circumvent your unalienable, God-given rights to your life, liberty, and property. And everything you do in your life involves one of those three.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have a
Yeah.
right. You don't have a right to be an elector, by the way.
No.
But you have a right to be qualified.
Yes.
And if you don't qualify proper, you still don't have a right. You got to be either deputed, as the words are used by the Federalists. Uh, there's a whole bunch of little neat little parts to our system that were designed to make sure that the educated, smart, intelligent, old enough people who have lived long enough to have a common sense to show people how they can cohabit, amongst themselves correctly without war, would be put in the positions that we're talking about. But see,
Yeah.
even as far back as Washington, everybody goes woo about Washington. So, well, you don't get it, buddy. The guy was a Mason, and he's the guy that hired the guy that laid out D.C. in a very demonic way. So everybody at that level back in those days were somehow affected in one way or another from the demonic forces that were here in that time, and you just couldn't get away from it. But here we are now, having an opportunity to face the whole thing and to move away
Yeah.
from it.
Well, I'll say this. I've been doing a lot of research, mostly at my county seat and the library and the historical society, digging deep into the county charter and the things that they had to share, mostly concerning my own property and my family's property, about my family's past. And when I ask
Where's your
questions,
state?
they've been, pardon,
Where's your state? What was the
Missouri,
date of statehood? Yeah, I know you show me
18,
state.
yeah, eight, I think it was 18, about 1812.
Okay, you're one of the states, and you're on an equal footing with all the other original states. And see,
I,
there's
I think
whether
so.
Yeah, whether you have a really good solid foundation in your statutes at large, the first ones, that's an issue. And when you start looking through your statutes, you want to find out the important things like what's an elector? Is the word even in there? Is it a freeholder? And if it is, what's the qualifications? And I'll tell you something I just found tonight because I was looking under that in that sheriff's manual, and I'm trying to recall back. Oh, I know what it was. It was the 1792 Militia Act, and the sheriff's manual it quotes it. But there was a word that I knew should have been in a specific spot, and it wasn't there. So I went online and I just looked up the general application. I copied it right out of the manual and typed it in, and I got the original act, and all the right words were there. And that one word that wasn't in the one in the manual was in the congressional record. So
Huh.
if people just don't get this, okay, these people have been manipulating the laws and the codes and the rules and the statutes forever. Ever since we became, if we did actually become a independent sovereign nation, that all those questions are yet to be completely and totally answered. But let me tell you this: if you can't become sovereign in your own person, and I don't like that word, but I'm just going to use it anyway. If you can't do that, and you can't develop the natural non-response to all the things in your life that you're trying right now to get around, then you just haven't come to that part yet where you're qualified as an awakened soul to be able to move to the next level. That's like going from kindergarten to college. Well, you don't get there in one step. And so this little thing that we're all going through is more than just one step. And we've been at it for a long time. But right now is graduation day out of college because
Hmm.
now we're stepping in a place where we're all the head professor in our own personal life.
Yeah.
That's the
Well, it's
that's one of the biggest parts of this, man.
yeah.
This is the amazing time in history that comes around and it goes around and you're here.
Yeah.
So, and for whatever purpose that I got to this point in my walk, I know why I'm here. I know what I've been told to do. I know how to do it. I know who to look for. I know who can understand and can take step towards it. I see it every day. I see somebody that, claims they know something and they really don't. But it isn't about whether they're qualified or not. It's just like, you can't give that 2-year-old a football and put him on the starting line with the Rams and say, here, buddy, take that across the finish line. It's like, forget it. It ain't
Yeah.
happening. So,
Well, I'll be quiet, but there's a lot of people there that might have other questions.
okay.
Is there anyone that has a question? This is RJX. Go ahead. If you've got a question, just go ahead and ask. Unmute yourself.
Well, I guess I covered it all, huh?
Well, no, I have some questions.
Oh, wow. I figured you
I'm
might.
sorry.
Well, go
Let's
ahead.
see. You mentioned something about in order to own the land, I think you had to be a citizen. Um, well, we've got all these Chinese coming in buying up our land.
Oh, you just had to bring that up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I'm
Well, then let
sorry.
me then let me clarify it for you. This land has been speculated almost to the point of non-existing. Okay, and this group, this Jesuits and Tories and attorneys, and their banking cartel
Zionists. How about
and the
Zionists?
Zionists and
I
all of them.
remember them talking about Zionists. Yeah.
They're all part of the same club. Okay, now
Okay.
listen, this is important. The whole idea with all these groups that are all looking for the same end is to get rid of the white sovereignty in this country. And I don't mean just tell them to go home. I mean get rid of them. Because I saw the trucks that came across the Mexican border.
Genocide.
Yes,
Genocide.
yes, Mom, genocide. I saw the trucks that came across that southern border down San Diego with guillotine blades on them, and
Yeah, I've
they were
heard
heading
that.
that well, I saw them, and they were headed for some of the Walmart stores.
Oh my God.
Walmart was one great big, it still is, one great big underground cavern that leads off into parts unknown. Like most people haven't heard much about this Ventura thing been going on here in the last week or so, but there were 20 elite homes that were torched. Uh, and if you're not familiar with thermite, that's the stuff they brought the tower down with,
Yeah.
and the other building, the Oklahoma City bombing. So they painted that stuff on all the columns inside the buildings. Well, that stuff melts steel. And I had a personal experience with that with a very close friend of mine who they dropped one of those little things down his chimney, melted his whole house and a car porch 50 feet away from the house, melted it. So this is some bad stuff. Well, these people have gone about in bringing in all these other ethnic people. All right, I'm not a racist. I got some of my best friends are other ethnicities. Okay, but when we get into a discussion about where your roots are, uh, they don't generally want to hear it. And I'm like, why not? Wouldn't you like to know where your rights really are or where they come from? Because I know for a fact that most people in this country that came here, they all had one word that followed them. It was called European. And if you don't know what that word means, there's one of the words you want to look at in Noah Webster's, Europe. And it's very specific. And I spent a lot of time down at our law library looking through a race dictionary. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, well, there's one there. If you want to stick your nose in it, depends on what county you're in. But LA is probably one of the most complete of all the law libraries, county law libraries that I've ever been in. The only one better than that would be the the federal one,
Right there.
Library of Congress.
Let me ask you
But
that. Now,
let me
does
finish.
every county have a law library?
They better have, because every
Okay.
county has. Now listen, every county has a common law court. Whether they recognize it now or not, they will at some point, or they won't be. Because remember, and you may not have looked at the original naturalization statutes. It's probably a good place for somebody who's in the situation that you're asking about. You might want to go look at all of them. Start from 1790 and just follow your lead. And look at the words they use to define who has jurisdiction and what the person is going to become. It's all there from beginning to end. And the kicker stopped with the word white in 1869. And when they left it out, they just left it out. They didn't put it in. And the people that were watching all this, they said, wait a minute, you can't leave that word out of there. Well, 2169 is the naturalization statute that identifies you as a European or a white person. That doesn't mean that there aren't other races that have been included now in the Naturalization Acts, but none of them have any foundational authority because they didn't have the authority to naturalize in the federal side in the first place. It had to be done in the state court. And if you read the very first 1790 statute, naturalization, and then go to some of the early states like New York, look up their first statutes and look up the naturalization process because they all have it. But the further down the road they get, the further off point they get with citizenship. So this state citizen thing is part of our foundation. It isn't something that came along with the 14th Amendment. So you're gonna get if you get your head wrapped around the right books and the right words and the proper capitalization and the case law that supports it, then you're gonna be standing on solid ground. So all these Asian people that are here now, they have no standing here. Zero. And the only people that that will maybe come up to the plate when it comes to the standing thing will be the Indians. And they're not native to this country. They didn't. They were not the first humans on North America. That was another whole group of elements, not people. So they came from another country, from another continent. And then all of a sudden the white man shows up and they tried to get involved, but the Jesuits weren't having any of it. They stuck their nose in everything. They created strife. They created Indian wars. They created. If you really get deep enough into this, you're going to find out that just about everything that's been done to split up these, uh, I'll just call them how it is, these ignorant white people who didn't know that they had been captured and what they had to do in order to change it, which was in effect impossible because they weren't ready. We're ready now. Now is the time. Trump is here, and whether you like him or not, he set the example. He said it coming down the escalator. He said, I'm here for one thing, to give the sovereignty back to the states and the people. And the word people and citizens of a state are synonymous terms. Chisholm versus Georgia. So if you can't get this through your head, if you don't have any basic foundation for what I'm telling you, all these people that are here that don't have the roots here, and the Asian people are one of them. They came from Asia. They didn't come from America.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even come from Europe. All right? The white people came from Europe. And what's the word Europe mean? Land of the white face, as opposed to the black and the Asian. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's three main. Look, there's in that race dictionary that I found at the LA Law Library. It goes down, I think, to the 10th generation of offspring, uh, from 100% to 9/10ths to 8/10ths to 7/10ths to 6/10ths, and all the different variations in between. It tells you what they're called, what their bloodline is, and all that stuff. All right. Now, there's you heard of the Caucasian, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what that is?
No.
It's red, brown, and white. And the reason it's red, brown, and white is because if you skinned them and laid the skeletons down there side by side, they'd all three look exactly the same. They
Oh
have the
yeah.
same skeletal structure. Well, which are the other two? And they don't have the same. The Asian, it's called the Negroid and the Mongoloid. That's in the dictionary. I didn't write that. So you've got Caucasian, Negroid, and Mongoloid. That's three. That's it. That's the human race. Now you can mix those up. In fact, I've seen some of the most unbelievable things. You're going to see stuff like, I'll give you an example. You ever seen a cross between a human and a tiger?
No, but I've heard about it. All different
Yeah.
kinds
Well,
of all different
yeah.
kinds of humans and other animals.
That just shows you how sick this group is, that we are now being given the opportunity to expose and to eliminate. But we can't eliminate that. We've got to eliminate where we are. We got to take ourselves out of that frequency, out of that vibration, out of that consciousness. It's up to us to move up, not for us to push them down. This is not going to be an easy thing for a lot of people, because there's going to be things they're going to see in these upcoming months and maybe even a year or two that they're not going to believe, and they're going to be so blistering upset. They're just not going to be beside themselves. So, and there you go with that uncontrolled response. Ooh, have you had a past life somewhere in all of this that's going on? Because that's the reason you're having these really bad responses and feelings about what you're seeing. So learn how to neutralize that. Spend your quiet time. Listen to that seashell noise in your ear. Look at that dot on the ceiling with your eyes closed. Look for a light. Ask a question. What do I need to do with this problem I have right now? Not what somebody else can do to fix it for me, because that's not their job. It's your job, and you're the only one that can fix it. So if you don't want to stand up to the sheriff, if you're afraid to put that sign, no trespass, foreign soil, by appointment only on your house, your domicile, your car, your business, I don't care what is yours, that sign needs to be there. and the sheriff needs to know about it. And if you're afraid to mail it to the sheriff, if you're afraid to mail it, if you can't get in a car and go, if you can't drive somewhere and put it in the mail to somebody and certified return receipts, and you know what you do? There's 3 letters on your phone that'll get their attention.
911.
You got it, kiddo. And I did that just specifically to tell the operator on there that I had an issue I needed some answers for. And you know what? She gave me the answer. She still wanted to know where I was calling from. I said, that's fine. Just make sure you don't send somebody over here that hasn't been invited. So if you can call the sheriff, think about this. After everything that I'm telling you about your rights, you have the right to travel without a license. You have the right to work without paying taxes. You have a right to own property without paying property taxes. You have a right to state-issued ID by the office created just for that. And if they don't do it, you have a right to take the seal and make your own. All these are little things. You have the absolute sovereign, unalienable right. These are our prerogatives as the sovereignty in this nation. We didn't have to ask permission for those things. And the government that we created, which go back to its beginning, these were the duties of the system to fulfill those things that protect us in our own person. Private, sovereignty. I don't care if I got to have diplomatic ID. What difference does it make? If I go run over somebody, I'm gonna be liable no matter what. Whether you're going to be liable in this time or the next time, it don't matter. So you can't skate around the things you do in life that are causing someone else's damage to their life, liberty, or property. That's karmic. And we're at a point right now where all those things are coming to a head and giving us the opportunity to stand up and be responsible. So you got to call the sheriff. Hey, I need help. Why? I'm afraid. Why? I know I've got the right to travel without a license. I know I got the right to my domicile without paying taxes. I know I have a right to proper ID, but you guys, you're all identified incorrectly too. And I need help. Please come and help me. This is an emergency. I'm in fear of my life. If you took the plates off your car and you got into the street and you started driving around running stop signs, whether you hurt somebody or not, if you didn't hurt anybody, nobody could do anything. Would you be afraid to run that stop sign without a plate on your car and no driver's license in your pocket? Would you?
It would be hard.
Okay,
You know,
that's enough.
when I was younger,
Now
I would have
listen.
done that.
Yeah, but listen, honey. That's enough fear for you to make the 911 call. Think about this. There isn't anything I've told you tonight that the average person is just going to say, "Oh yeah, that's no problem. I can do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, show me." I've got some big boy people that just, they give me all this stuff about how great they are and how much they know and their strength and their power. And, I said, oh, yeah? Let me see you take your plate off your car and go down there in front of that sheriff station and run back and forth through that stop sign without stopping. Let me see you do that. What are you, crazy? Yeah. Am I crazy? Oh, okay. I just showed where you are because you don't know what your rights are and you're afraid to address it. And you're afraid to educate that one guy in this county that's responsible directly to you. Directly. The people, as freeholding state citizens, are the electors, the qualified freeholders who elect the sheriff in their county. That's who he's responsible to. He is the highest executive authority in the county, and you are his boss. So what are you going to do about it? You're going to let these crooks that have been taxing you on everything, stealing your property, making you pay license fees and everything else, get away with what they've been doing? That sign's the best thing I could think of, and it came to me in the middle of all this, because I ask questions and I get answers. I remember when I was standing looking at getting kicked out of the last freehold we were in, and I just kind of said, well, what's next? And that very familiar voice came on and it said, you need to create a lawsuit and make the citizen of a state the plaintiff and a citizen of the United States the defendant. Well, that little case went all the way through the circuits, up through the ninth, and all the way sitting at the Supreme Court with that Brunson case. Now, if you think this is a bunch of hooey, you're talking to the wrong guy.
No, I don't think it is at all. No, I know. I think you really did that.
It's done. Now,
Yeah,
how about your
I think you
empire?
really did do it. Yeah,
I did it. And in fact,
you've
I
got a lot
posted.
of courage.
It's nothing to do with that. It's I have developed a neutral response to the corrupt system that I've been part of myself. I know those lifetimes where I was different people, and I'm like, oh, boy, you were a real a-hole in that one, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, here I am, and I'm dealing with all that now. That's interesting because that's what every single one of us on this call has got the same capacity to learn who and what you've been in previous time and to know why you're here right now and why you're having this opportunity to mend some of the things that you're directly responsible for from previous times. And you'll know them by the way you think, how you feel, and most importantly, how you respond to those things when you're confronted with some kind of authority that has none.
And yeah, I don't like confrontations.
Huh? There you go.
I
Now you know
don't.
what
I
you need to
don't.
do, huh? See?
Yeah. Well,
Con-
it's going to be hard.
Confrontation. Nobody said it was easy. You know what? You know what it's like to be sitting in a position where you've been working. You got this great job. You got a house, a family, wife, kids, boat, cars, vacation, and all of a sudden the knock on the door comes and the IRS says, "Hey man, you owe more money. That you owe another $2,000 this year." And I'm like, I didn't go to law school. Yeah, well, I got the word on that one later on. And so it's like, okay, I'd already been groomed. I knew that the time was going to come. I was just ahead of it. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, oh boy, well, why do I have with this money? Well, they put you in a different tax bracket. What? And they 2000. This was in 1980. $2,000? I got to give them $2,000 just because they moved my number to a different line? What the hell is that about? Well, that was the beginning of that. And I found myself in the middle of the fight of my life against the biggest criminal organization, almost, in the history of the planet. And I remember that first hearing day after I'd filed my case, U.S. District Court, Alice Marie Stotler, she's dead now. And I'm in there, and I walk in the courtroom, and there's nobody there but the judge, the clerk, the marshal, me, and my entourage, which was about 6 people. And I sat down, and they called the case. I got up on the podium, and the U.S. Attorney General was standing there next to me, and I started talking. And to this day, I have no clue what I said. And I never did go back and get a court reporter transcript of the hearing because everybody that was there with me wanted to know, where did you learn all that? Because I never talked the way I talked when I was in that courtroom. And I just looked at them and said, I don't know what you're talking about. What did I say? Ah, and they were just sitting there kind of with their mouth open. All right. And after I got through talking, the Alice Marie Stotler, she looks over at the Attorney General and says, well, what do you have to say to that? And he just kind of looked at her, looked over at me, and he said, well, I guess just because you have a certain citizenship, uh, you don't have to pay taxes. And the judge looked at me, looked at him, and she said, well, I can see this is going to appeal because she denied my motion, okay? But I didn't stop there. And I wound up going all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court about 6 different times until finally I asked the right question in a way that the Attorney General couldn't get around it. And the court was instructed that he not answer the question, which was what was the specific document that I signed that made me an officer, employee, or elected official of the United States or a citizen of the United States. What did I sign? And she said, your case is dismissed and the vexatious litigant order is being signed and you can't file anything else in this court without my permission. And I went right straight back up to the U.S. Supreme Court on her order. And guess what I got told? Oh, the writ of error has been abolished. Huh? The writ of error. That can't be. That's a writ of right. Courts have ruled on that. In fact, that's probably one of the most utilized writs in our early history of any other writ, because everything that involves your life, your liberty, or your property is a common law right, if you're a citizen of the state, that has to be heard under the writ of right, writ of error. That means the court below erred in their ruling and took away something belonged to you that they didn't have the right, the power, the jurisdiction to do it. Like your right to liberty? Yeah, I've been driving around with no license on. Really? Well, that statute actually requires that the state give you an exempt plate. Why didn't they do that? I don't know. Why don't you ask them? I asked them 10 times. See, these are the kind of stuff I'm talking about. But how many people even have a clue about what their rights really are, or where to go get remedy? Or are they willing to try? Because that's the big secret here. I didn't say you got to be an attorney or a lawyer or a professor or anything else. You just got to be willing to take a step to see. And you know what the crazy part about it is? Like I said, I never went to law school in this life. But when I ask the question, what I need to do, there's a group of masters that are following us, and they know who we are, where we are, what we're doing. And when you do start doing something that faces the system in a way that's for the benefit of the universe, if you want to call it that, they're right there on you. And you ask the right question, you're going to get an answer. And it's never stopped to this day. And when every time I get on one of these calls, it's like I know in advance of generally what's going to be said, but I have no control of what I say. It's based on the people listening to the call and what they need to hear, and whether they take it to heart and actually get involved at this time in their life. It's 100% up to them, not me. All I am is the messenger. So, is there anything else that I can help you with on
Well,
this
it's not like
particular
you're
topic?
just it's not like you're just the messenger, Mason. You have done all this research and you've been through all of this, every bit of
I've
it,
got
all the way from
I,
the lowest court to the highest court.
and more, and I've got lifetimes in this stuff. So it's not like this was my first trip, and that's
Yeah.
why I had a. I'm going to tell you something. When I finally asked the question, why am I here? Why did I come back? And that little voice went on and said, well, you got to work on your compassion. Oops. Oh boy. So it's like and the minute I got that, it's like, oh yeah, I do have some compassion issues with certain people. Well, it's like, okay, I don't care if it's only one. If you got a problem, you got a problem. You got to get over it. Figure out what you're doing. Spend a little time on the inner. Ask for a little guidance if you need it. But remember something. It's every day is full of issues that you respond to. I don't care if it's eating a bowl of your most favorite ice cream and you got a smile on your face, or it's the little dog next door bit you on your big toe and it hurts like hell and you got to go to the hospital and you want to kill the little mother. I don't care. Whatever it is, you got things in your life that you don't like and you respond badly to them. And it's those responses that keep that part of you from growing. And you got to get a handle on it or it's just going to continue to grow. And that's what the lifetimes are
I'm
all
getting
about.
better. I'm getting better.
That's what
I can
lifetimes
tell
are
that
all
I'm
about.
growing. Yeah.
Okay. And so if you're complaining about I don't like that and that's crazy talk and I don't okay whatever. It's all up to you to figure it out. All I can
Oh,
do
I
is
would
point the
never say you're not talking crazy talk. I might be talking crazy talk, but not you.
well I've been getting my talk comes from another place in the universe and it isn't the local college or law school.
You're
you know
right. You're
and it's
right.
and
I
it's
had
sure and it's not a dictionary and it's not even the Constitution because there's things in that Constitution that are total garbage as far as I'm concerned, and I know I took part in putting that thing together.
oh
But
no, Lord.
but those are the things that we find out
Mm,
about, and when you do, You can look in the mirror and say, "Yeah, that was pretty dumb. You were playing on the left side of this." Yeah, I know. That never was supposed to be a national military, but the founders
Mm.
put it in there. The founders put it in there. When I went back and rewrote that doc, I rewrote the Constitution 3 different times. And every time I got to this one spot, I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do with this thing? People are going to look at this and say, well, what do you mean we can't have a national military? And I'm like, yeah, I know, man. I mean, look how many people we have in the military. I got some very close friends in the military, and they want to talk to me about their situation and all the benefits they get and all that. You only got benefits because you were the underlings and you were the hitman for this back deep dark crazy bunch of child eating, fornicating, killing, murdering demons, and you don't get it, and you signed up for it, and if you didn't volunteer, they drafted you. Well, I'll give you a little piece of that. My son came to me on the day that he got his notice to appear. He said, "Dad, what am I going to do with this?" I said, "Well, I don't know. What would you like to do?" He says, "Well, I don't want to join that mess," because he already had an idea about what was going on there. And I said, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's go to the law library." So we went down there. I went over and I pulled over the volume with all about statutes at large, the first ones, and we got to the part about militia. And I said, "Okay, you're a state citizen, right?" He said, "You betcha." I said, "Well, this statute applies to state citizens, and uh, it tells you that if you choose not to take part or volunteer into the active participation of the militia, you can pay $2, real dollars, to the Secretary of the Treasury for the county to have someone else fill in for you. Statute book, okay?" So he said, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Let's go get a $2 money order." I said, "They don't take gold and silver now." So we got a $2 postal money order and mailed it off to the little letter opting out from voluntary compliance. I said, "Look, honey, the only way they can get you into any kind of a confrontation is if there's an act of war against the state. They can't just come over and get the militia and say, 'Come over here. We got a group of thugs over here. And we want you guys to take care of.' That ain't, what are you talking about? That's the sheriff's job. Now, if the
Mm-hmm.
sheriff wants to get now if the sheriff wants to get a posse together, that's a different matter. And if it's in your area where the problem is, you might want to be one of the militia guys, or I mean one of the posse guys. And we're all supposed to be armed anyway, right?
Yep.
So what's one guy going to argue about when 10 guys with guns show up? You think he's going to still be an idiot? No. But that's how you take care of that kind of stuff. That's how a system was set up. So he mails off this opt out of the U.S. club and sends it off, and we never heard another word. That was the end of it. So if people don't get straight in their head about what our system, how it's set together, who is who, what's your rights, what's your position, what's your duties, what's the government's position, what's their duties. It's all been written down, and I think I put a whole document in there on duties of the state and of the people. And I don't know that it's 100% complete, but I got news for you. There's enough in there for the average person to get the idea. Say, we have a what they still call a Republican form of government, and that only applies inside the District of Columbia. Just so you understand that. That does not apply to the states. The states are federal, and that word is very specific. That's one of Noah's correct words. It means a union. It's a union of princes. That's called a league. A federal union is a league of princes. So we are princes in the correct definitions of the term, based on our heritage, where we came from, and the fact that the King of England, when the Revolution took place, all of his rights and prerogatives were transferred to the people. And the people who were subjects of the crown are now citizens of the state in those words. And they don't mince with those words. And they're found in too many other places that anybody that doesn't understand that, they're just barking up the wrong tree. I get a little bit annoyed with when people keep using the wrong stuff and they have no evidence to prove what they're saying or where you get it from, and there's no law behind it. It's just a word. Doesn't mean nothing. And it sure as heck doesn't apply to the king. So anyway, I think you get the idea. And
Yeah, yeah.
as 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 I've already told Salty and whoever else is interested in getting on board, I mean Low Tide, he's a good guy, and Mr. GA, he's out there floating around, and I don't know who else. I mean, there's got to be enough uh, people who are awake enough to want to take a step in this direction.
Allison's out there. I remember from last week. Allison is out there.
Yeah, but see, this isn't going to be a
She's
one
already
man deal.
done. She's already done her no trespassing.
Perfect. When's she going to call 911?
I don't know. She's already sent letters to everybody
Oh, fantastic. See, and
with
did she
the
send them
yeah.
return
Go
receipt
ahead.
and the whole bit?
I, I
Perfect.
think so. I think
All
so.
right. That's good.
She's done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, see,
She's
with
real
that,
close. Now, how do you know when you're there? How do you know when you've already that you're there? You are
whoa,
a
whoa, wait a
citizen
minute.
of the state.
Now you're asking a whole question that can only be found in one place,
In my head or something.
in your heart.
In my heart, okay.
Yep. And when you're no longer afraid to take a step towards the system, regardless of the way, you're ready. You got it. And I don't care if you got a birth certificate or not. I don't care if you got a state issued ID or not. Once you know what the requirements to be a sovereign in this world is about, and you find out that it's governed by all the spiritual laws and principles, man don't have nothing to do with that. Man is going to abide by the law or he's going to suffer the consequences. And that's what everybody's having to deal with right now because they can't change it. There's no amending the karmic laws. It's not possible because those laws are created by the entire universe and everybody in it. Try to amend that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't believe what I'm saying, it's fine. It's your prerogative.
I
And
do believe
if you
what you're
don't,
saying. I do.
well, I'm talking to the
I
rest of the group.
absolutely 100% believe it.
I'm talking to the rest of the people that are on this call,
Oh,
and
okay.
however many there might be. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I know that there's a bunch on here that are going to be getting enlightenment about it, and hey, they may even, get enough gumption to want to step up and talk to their local sheriff. Because, like I said, outside of the posse, the sheriff is the first line. The people have a right to bear arms. That's the first line. The sheriff is just the backup. You got to have the right
Even if I
title.
wasn't, I was
You
going to
got to
say, even if
separate
I wasn't
yourself.
going to talk to him even if I wasn't going to talk to him about this, I would be afraid to even walk in there and talk to him about anything. I don't know why, but
Oh,
yeah,
what a
I'm
big
not
baby.
kidding.
Oh, man. Well, you think he's going
I
to
just,
bite you or something?
I don't know, put me in jail or something. I
Oh,
don't
put
know.
you
And
for what?
I haven't even
Listen to
done
this.
anything wrong,
Okay,
but
let me ask you
that's
this.
just,
Let me ask you. Let me ask you something. You're did
okay, go,
I think you heard something on the call the last time about some order that went out to all the sheriffs that they were now mandated to follow the dictates or the principles or the rules or whatever you want to call it of the Constitution, where before it was just you could if you wanted to or you didn't have to, and
oh
all of a
yeah,
sudden
I
they're
did
all
hear
being
that.
told. Uh,
Hmm.
I wonder where that came from and if it was an executive order or what, because I haven't personally seen anything, with respect to that. But I'm going to tell you right now, it only takes a few citizens in the county to address their sheriff in a way that, by the way, sheriff, did you know, and here's the paperwork that shows and proves you are a non-registered foreign agent. You're working for a criminal cartel. It's a RICO organization that's paying you. What's he going to do? What's he going to say? Anybody with one eye and no brains that was in that position as a sheriff, he'd be looking at you and saying, "Can you show me where this is stated? How would I know that to be true?" I said, "Yeah, you just take a couple of steps towards the law, and you'll find out because that code rule bullshit book you carry. Excuse my little French there. By the way, I'll tell you about the meaning of that word. S-H-I-T, and it doesn't mean what everybody thinks it means. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah. So if you don't think that the law is for the people, not for the sheriff, the law protects the people. The people have the right to the things that they have a right to, and the sheriff has the duty to make sure they're protected in exercising that right. So I drove down here without plates on my car. What are you going to do to me if I don't put them back on?
Oh, I don't think I'd ask that.
Why not? If I
Because
give you, if I show you the statute that says you have the absolute right to travel in a private conveyance, are you familiar with Title 18?
no, I'm
And the
not.
yeah, well, that's the federal criminal code. And I'm not going to say that that federal criminal code is 100%, but I'll tell you what, it's got enough truth in it that the average person that starts looking through it, especially Chapter 115, you're going to find out that there are things listed in there, and there's another big one in there which has to do with fictitious entities. You know what a U.S. citizen is? That's a
A
fictitious entity.
fictitious entity.
Entity,
Okay.
yeah.
I
There's a
was thinking of.
citation.
I was thinking that it was that we were maybe British citizens or something.
Yeah, you ain't British nothing. Now
We're
listen,
not. Okay.
that
Good.
U.S. citizen, no, you're a citizen of a state. If you were born here and you're European, there's no question. And I don't care where your lineage goes. If your father and mother were born here, or if they got naturalized here as a European and you're their kids, you're a state citizen. They can't help it because people don't know what the law is or how to enforce it. But the state courts are where that happens, and the U.S. government has no jurisdiction to do it. Period. But they've gotten away with it because the Jesuits have made sure they hide all the truth wherever they can, and usually it's done through the educational system, which is where their dirtiest deeds are done because the kids are being inundated with all kinds of lies, misstatements, and I remember school was my worst subject. Period. So we're going down a road right now that's designed for the people to stand up, wake up, take a step, and have freedom. I don't know how long this freedom's going to last for each of us, but the word is that golden age is quite a long time. It's a whole lot more than 1,000 years, I'll tell you.
Wow.
But that's another matter. And when you get to a point where you have out-of-body experiences, there's all kinds of neat things that you can go through and have experiences with. But you got to be willing to step up to the little self and say, "Shut the hell up! You're doing what I'm telling you. You ain't gonna do what that emotional body says don't do."
Yeah.
You don't
Well,
have to go to the
let me
sheriff's
just.
office by yourself. You can
I,
take a buddy.
oh, really? Good. That would help me a lot.
No problem.
I would just feel so much more confident going in there with somebody else.
Look at you know what Salty set up. She said we need study buddies,
Yeah. I did see
and you
that.
don't
Yeah.
you don't have anybody you don't have anybody in your area that you know that personal enough that might be interested in getting freedom as is
No, I
intended.
don't. No, I really
Well,
don't.
why don't you put it out there? Now, I'm not talking about putting a sign on the front door. That's not what I said. You know how you get answers to your questions, especially when they're important, and especially when you're getting ready to address that big monster that's been controlling you your whole lifetime, your emotional body? You know what happens? The universe brings to you the very things you need to address it. Why? Because you're doing it not just for you, you're doing it for the universe. And everybody in it has the same attribute. This is no rocket science. This isn't some mystery novel. These are things in life that everybody right now is experiencing, and they just don't have a clue about how to deal with it. And you're getting an opportunity right now to do just that. Deal with it. Take that step. Oh my God, the sheriff is going to eat me. Oh, that's low
Yeah,
tide.
that's true.
That's low tide. Oh, I just got called him. He's going to eat me. Oh, come on.
Not fair.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It was
Nice.
funny. Ha ha.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you got a sense of humor.
Yeah. I
Well,
got a
All
question
right.
though.
Yeah.
I got a question. So, say sometime in the near future, I'm ready to step off in faith or in good judgment and
Okay.
surrender my commercial license to drive commercial vehicles,
Yeah.
and I, that's not a big deal, but
Yeah.
um, it's surrender all the commercial things that I have.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you don't
do
have to get
it,
rid of everything if you don't want. I'll show you how to do it both ways. It's not
well,
complicated.
we can do that sometime, but um,
Yeah.
how how do you judge when you're ready to step off and go into deep water
Well, let me tell you how you know when you're not ready.
like
That's the
today?
key. You're not ready if you're not willing.
Yeah.
And then you don't do it. You keep putting it off.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to decide when am I going to take the tags off my vehicles,
Which one?
and I've got a lot of them.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the commercial side.
Oh, well, I only well, I was I was
The
considering
ones that you
putting.
let me requalify. Let me Todd, let me requalify what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You only have so many private vehicles. I mean, how many do you need? You got one that you go to the store. You got one that you
Yeah.
take your kids to the forest. You got one that you go
Okay.
hunting with. You got one that you whatever.
Yeah.
How many do you need? 5, 6?
Well, okay, that's a good number.
All right, so they're all private. So those vehicles you're entitled to have exempt plates on it. Now I was gonna point to the statute in the federal codes, which I didn't quite get to with the vehicle. Go to Title 18, Section 31, and that is the um, the definitions under Title 31 deals with commercial vehicles, and it's very specific, and it only applies to vehicles that are used for the transportation of persons or property for higher profit and gain.
Okay.
That means public.
Yes,
Okay.
I know. But
It does
but
not apply. It does not apply to the private side. And I put on all the documents there. There's a 1925 California Statutes at Large, Section 412. Now, the big question comes, well, that's California. So, uh, are we on an equal footing across the board? Are all the people, all the sovereignty in this nation equal in their sovereignty?
no.
What? Since when?
Only state citizens are, right?
That's the people.
Oh, okay.
The people, the word people and state citizen are synonymous terms in this system.
But
How many times have you read how many times have you read the preamble of the Constitution? What does it
but
say?
I agree. I understand what you're saying there, but I thought that some of those
Okay.
were
Now
foreign
listen. This is
citizens.
not. No, no. Listen. This is not complicated. I don't want you to get your head all messed up with this. There are certain words in this system that are specific, and they're across the board. They don't just apply to one person in one little corner of one little back door in one little corner of an alleyway on the back end of almost on the border of a foreign state,
Yeah.
because they apply to every citizen of the state and every free inhabitant who has applied for citizenship. Remember that there's a very important part to all this.
Yeah.
And the words in that case, inhabitant, actually has to deal with the state citizenship, the application for citizenship. But you got to remember, we're getting ready to go through a complete metamorphosis when it comes to the naturalization process because it's totally in the toilet,
Well.
and it's all going to be corrected. It's not going to be changed or altered. It's going to be corrected
Well.
because the
I
U.S. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I just go ahead. I
So
was trying to.
All
trying to
right.
catch your breath.
So when it comes time for you to want to do a test vehicle, for instance, this little no trespassing foreign soil sign and a notice, a very simple one-page notice to your local sheriff, hand delivered would be the best, and him in person, even better. And if he doesn't want to deal with you, you might want to do a simple writ of mandate to your local county judicial officer.
All right.
Now the reason I'm giving you these little pieces is because this whole system is getting ready to do a complete upendo. And all the things I'm telling you about, the rights, the privileges, the examples, the limitations on the system, the duties of the people, uh, your prerogatives, they're all coming into play. It's just that some of us have an idea about what all those things are and where you need to go to address them if you need it all. Because there's going to be some of the people here that are just going to automatically go, that's a bunch of bunk. And I put my own plate on my car. I made my own ID. I don't need somebody else to make it for me. The state seal belongs to the people, not to the Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm.
That's a people's
Get,
seal. Just like the
did,
flag, it's the people's flag. It ain't the state's flag. It ain't the U.S. flag. The U.S.
did you put
belongs to the people too.
did you put
Whether
that
they,
state seal on the plate?
you bet. In fact, I had the plate engraved.
Okay.
It had exempt
But
right across the middle of it, and then I took and I recorded it at the county recorder's office,
okay.
and then I sent
Well, I
copies of
mean,
that to the sheriff.
it, that's where I go back to the beginning of
So
the
what you
question
do?
where I did. Yeah, go
Here's
ahead.
what you do. Here's what you do. You take that plate. You have it made, however you want it to look. Well, it doesn't matter. It should be your design. Put the state seal in it. Put your identification number, whatever it is, which would most likely be, and I would suggest the county recorder file number. And then you take a letter and you would hand it to the sheriff. And the letter is, on this date, whatever date it is, you're going to start engaging the system with your plate. Because of all the laws that you have complied with, it's going to have exempt on it. And because you asked the Department of Motor Vehicles ahead of time to issue you an exempt plate, and they refused, you're going to have all the evidence of what you did to put yourself in a position of being 100% on the right side of this. And you know what silence is in the law?
Yeah. No, I don't
When
know.
an,
No. No.
when an inquiry left unanswered would be intentionally misleading. That's called fraud. Now, when you inquire with the sheriff whether or not he's going to arrest you because you have a private plate on a private car by a state citizen and you're traveling in your sovereign capacity, is he going to arrest you because you have that plate on the car or because you have a state citizen homemade ID? And you put all those in your letter and give him the date that you're going to do it and ask him if he's going to do anything about it. You know what happens if he doesn't respond and show you that, yeah, you do that, I'm going to arrest you, and what's your authority for all that? Because you're going to have the law that verifies 100% that you are the individual who has the absolute right, the prerogative, to travel in your private conveyance throughout the several states at your own leisure, so long as you don't damage someone else's life, liberty, or property, and you're not doing it in a commercial capacity. No agency has jurisdiction over that property or that car or you. That's foreign soil to them.
But that does not give us the right to drive around with our existing tags and to let them expire and not expect to get pulled over and questioned about it, right?
I don't know what you expect, but I'll tell you what I would do with that in the meantime. What I would do with that in the meantime, and this is pretty simple. You get a for sale, a sale document, the one that you get when you have your vehicle registration comes to you for renewal. On the
Yeah.
last page, there's a a place for you to fill out who the car was sold to. They want to make
Okay.
sure that if you sold the car, that they know where to send the new bill. And what you're going to do is you're going to sell the car as the straw man, the all caps
Yeah.
thing, because that's what they put on the registration. You write it just like they write it on the registration renewal as the seller. And guess what? You're going to be the real man who buys it.
Okay.
How much did you pay? A
A
valuable
dollar.
consideration. A valuable consideration.
Okay. Okay.
That's it. That does it. And you send that back, certified return receipt, to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, I happen to know a couple of people, including myself, who've done this thing, and that was the last time we heard from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and we've been driving our cars with these expired plates for, I don't know, 6, 7 years, all over the place.
Well,
Nobody,
I
nobody does nothing. Nobody bothers us. But this
all
step
right.
I'm giving you right now, I did many years ago. And still, I finally had to force a cop to give me a ticket in order to get my issues to the Supreme Court a bunch of times. And they weren't ready to hear it. But
Well,
they're coming to the position now. And remember, we're in a time now where all of these agencies are getting their butts paddled. And I mean that in a worse way.
good.
So we're doing things now, and that's the reason I'm pressing this point with the people that I know that have an understanding about what I'm trying to give them. This time in their life is the very opportunity that's been coming, that it's now waning on whether they're going to have the experiences necessary to strengthen that emotional body with respect to the things in their life that they've been afraid of all this time. Because once we move into that next age, that frequency and all, it's going to be vacation time. You're going to be afraid of nothing because everything's going to be perfect. You're
Well,
going to
that's
own
wonderful.
everything. You're going to have your own property. You're going to be able to travel how you like it. Why? Because the only people that are going to be able to make it into that new level are the ones that are 1,000% integrity minded, spiritually awake, and know the rights of everybody, including themselves. Because
Good.
you can't go there until you have acquired and mastered yourself, separate from the lower frequencies, the 340 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So just know that's what's coming.
All right.
So the opportunity is not forever. It's a short period. I don't know what the end of this grace period, if you want to call it that, because I couldn't talk this stuff until about just after Trump came in was when it started, and it didn't really get going until just we'll say a year or so ago, and then I was given the green light because I was told already. I was told, don't give this stuff. The public isn't ready for it, and I knew better. I knew a lot of people that aren't breathing now because they didn't know better. So I went to the system. I didn't go to the public. It's a whole different world.
May I?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Mason. My name is Julie. First time on this call. I just wanted to ask if you can disclose who told you not to say anything.
Ha. That's something that you're going to find out about as you move through your spiritual worlds. Because
So it was
my
not an entity that is, like a corporate
no,
overseer.
no, I knew better,
Okay.
and I knew better because I was also told, and I got it from my own spiritual mentor. And they're not of this reality. They've already earned their stripes, so to speak. They're masters in their own time, and everybody gets an opportunity to evolve to that level. And these are the little things that we must go through and master in order for that to happen. And I can give you a bunch of examples, but I don't like doing that because usually people they get all, that's not right, that's crazy, that's stupid, whatever. Don't worry, you'll know when the time comes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Also, are any of your court experiences, your proceedings, or whatever outcomes and that, is any of that published anywhere that we can look at it to see?
The big one, the one that I got charged with unlawful use of the state seal in California, and got charged with a 20-plus year sentence, felony, went all the way to the Supreme Court and was docketed and was scheduled for hearing, and the lower court said, get this case out of here. Everything I put into the court from the bottom to the top has been eliminated because they didn't want the information that I used in that document to be published anywhere. And so it's not available. I'm the only one that's got the brief, and I put the brief in this document list that's on the website.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I'm just,
Yeah, but
as
see,
I'm
but let me
hearing
tell
you
you something.
talk, I'm
Let me
not
tell you
hearing a
something.
lot of reference to actual artifacts or resources. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. If I wanted to go and research further, where would I go? And where are those documents? Thank you.
The original, you start with your original constitution for your state and your original statutes at large. And if they don't have the things in there that I'm talking about, I was trying to explain that to Low Tide, that we're talking about an equal standing across the board. Every state in this union that's a lawful state, and there's going to be some issues with that, has equal footing in the sovereignty. And every citizen of a state has equal footing in that sovereignty as well. So the things I'm talking about, if you find the stuff I'm telling you in a statute in another state, it's still talking about the rights of the people. I don't care what state you're in. And if your state statutes don't talk about them, then somebody in your system was remiss because they didn't put them in there. Well, you don't have to worry about that because the equal footing doctrine gives you the right to take any statute from any state and utilize it as the law referencing the rights of the people. Don't get yourself all caught up in some technicality baloney that most people are not aware of, or that the system is trying to keep you from doing. Because again, I tell you, it's all about your willingness to step into that and do something with it. Don't be afraid. You'll get the help. Once you've done it, once you've moved in that direction, once you've made the step and you've agreed, you're willing to do it, you're going to get more help you know what to do with. But don't be afraid. Sometimes you're going to look like you're going, oh my God, I'm sliding down this hole and I don't get nothing to grab a hold of. And yeah, but you were willing to slide down the hole. And all of a sudden, something pops out and you grab it. Oh my goodness, looky here. I can't tell you how many of those things I've had. Yeah, it can be scary. But once you've made up your mind and you know and you've been directed, people ask me, well, was this your idea? I said, no, not no, but hell no. You got to be kidding. I said, well, why'd you do it? I said, I had no choice. What do you mean? I knew in the moment that the assignment came that it was something that it was my job, my duty, and my responsibility to address. It had nothing to do with anybody but me. And once you got that, I don't care how you get it. There's masters out there all over the place, and they've all got keen insights and sights. They know, and they can see and look and understand. They see a light shining all over the place. They see these little lights everywhere. Some of them are a little brighter than others. And the ones that come up glowing, ready to take a step towards that big monster that they were part and parcel in creating, because we've all been part of it. The minute that happens, there's a whole nother level of energy that comes into your life. And you're going to find things happening around you that you had no idea were possible. And I've lived it. Almost 80 years of stuff you can't even imagine. And my common law wife, she's right there with me 100%. We've been through some stuff. The average person, you got to be kidding. How'd you get through that? I said, no big deal. We just walk right through it, and everything was taken care of. Oh, And by the way, that Supreme Court justice on that case that I told you about, you may recognize the name. His name was Scalia, and he got whacked shortly after that. So he opened a can of worms. I opened the can of worms. He was getting ready to spill it out all over the place. And they didn't want that. And so they made sure that case got dismissed in the lower level, but they also made sure all the documents that I filed got eliminated. Don't be afraid. Step up. That's when you get all the insights. That's when you get the help.
Well, I have another comment. This week I had to go and get a new cell phone service. And you
What?
know what? The first thing I had to get a new cell phone service because I was on my sister's plan, and she got a
Yeah,
new
your cell
one,
phone. Yeah,
so I had to get a new one. And
yeah.
you know what? The first thing they asked me for, give me your ID.
Huh?
And I
Well,
was
why?
sitting there thinking, if I was already changed my status, what would I give them, and what would they even accept it?
Would you know what unless you did it? See, this is the big part about all this. When I found out who that seal of the state belonged to, you know what I did? I went and made
You
three
used it.
copies of that. I went and made three copies. One was an embosser, you know what an embosser is.
Yeah.
And then I made one the size of a real silver dollar and one the size of a real silver quarter. And every communication I had with the system, I don't care whether it was a notice, a demand, a request, a warning, or whatever it might have been, that seal was on my signature every time. And that case that finally got up to the Supreme Court on Scalia's order, um, that was the seal issue. Finally, after 12 years that I'd been using the seal on everything. And it just happened to happen. I did it on a very high-profile case where a guy had been jailed, prosecuted and jailed on some not so kind charges that the evidence looked like it pointed in a different direction than it had gone. And I was asked by some friends to do a habeas corpus for the guy. And of course, I did it as next friend, and that seal went right on that signature. And that's what raised all the eyebrows, and that's what caused me to have to deal with the system firsthand, and got a criminal case, 25 years to life, dismissed. And I'm still using the state seal.
So that pretty much is your ID, that your state seal and your signature.
I made my own ID. In fact, there's one posted on this website too that I put together just so everybody can see. There's also a Nebraska state ID that was done back in '92, which is the first one I saw that prompted me to do what I have been doing all along. And the only difference is that the Nebraska Secretary of State actually took the document and put the state seal on it and signed it. But the communist parties in California, they didn't want nothing to do with that stuff. They did everything they could to get rid of me. And that's why I'm no longer in California. I guess I'm in Pahrump.
Hey, Mason,
Yes,
are you aware of a gentleman by the name of Richard McDonald?
sure am. We were tight, tight, tight. I don't think
Okay.
he's alive now.
No.
Why?
Well, he covered a bunch of stuff in California that really irritated them. And if you were working with him, you were in good company.
Well, he was with me. I wasn't with him. And he
Either,
he had his own ideas. In fact, I took care of his motorhome when he spent some time in Lompoc for failing to file his federal tax returns. So yeah, I'm very familiar with Richard. Know him very well. And there was a couple of other people very tight too. So anyway, I'm just here to tell you that there's things that people can do. This time is short. I don't know how short. Like I said, There's some kind of a grace period going on right now, and all I can tell you is the people are ready to step up and do a little something to get their heart pounding. May find out that the pounding was just an exercise in learning how to control the emotional side of yourself and get you to another frequency.
Well, on top of things, the Federation of States has kicked a number of states for fraudulently failing to uphold their duty, and Missouri is one of them. So many of the states have been given notice to enact the private plate capacity that they're owing the people.
Okay? That's still up to the state to do that. And no other element outside the state can make any mandate unless it's from the U.S. executive side. The U.S. Attorney General, they got to enforce the duties of the states just like the people have to force their local governments to do their duties. And that's our job number one. So once we got enough sheriffs online, we don't need some other state's backdoor stuff to exercise our own sovereignty in our own jurisdiction. You're crossing state lines is not part of the deal here. That's what's getting ready to happen, and it's going to happen. And all it takes is to wake up. Get enough people to wake up, which is what most people are afraid of. They don't want to. They don't want to deal with that. They just want to get along. They don't want any confrontation. They want to have to go downtown and talk to the sheriff, who they should is working for them, and tell them why they're in in trouble already. But once we got a sheriff and we got a JAG judiciary, you'll see some things change, and that's supposed to happen pretty quick here, from what I'm hearing.
Has
Well, Jim,
Silver
do you,
Jim got? Go
yeah, I
ahead.
was going to say, Jim, do you have any news for since we were on last?
A little bit.
Well, can you share?
Okay, now this inhabitant language. People need to make the distinction pre and post Civil War, because what we're dealing with today is a corporate substitution of the actual American government. And with everything being corrected right now, when you read the statutes, codes, and regulations, be mindful that that doesn't fall under land law. Now, when you go in and state that you're owed private plates for the designation that you're not for hired, here in Washington, they never set anything in motion for that to ever be done. We have discovered a level of fraud here in Washington that probably is unique across the country. And getting the minions off their pedestals is part of the things that everyone's dealing with in your respective neck of the woods. But you have to walk into this with eyes open. In many cases, the people that you're dealing with don't know because they've not been informed. Now, the level of our fraud is the people here in the Northwest Territories went to Walla Walla, authorized a constitution to be submitted to D.C., but they didn't know that there was a corporate rump Congress substituting itself, and what they got back out of the Congress 11 years later doesn't resemble anything that the people authorized. when it comes down to the states being forced and compelled to issue this permanent private recognition, yes, you're going to end up having to put their feet to the fire, but you're going to be required to learn and uphold this. And like Mason said, get a backbone. Don't be afraid of your employees and putting them in their corrected positions. This is part of what this is all about. Are you willing to master yourself, your emotions, and those things that you actually authorize? Have fun with it, by the way. There's nothing more disarming than a smile to your employees. I yield.
Well, thank you for that. I know you said a little bit here that was similar to what Mason was saying, and I don't know, hearing it different ways, it I think it helps. Does anyone here have any questions? If you do, please just unmute and start asking. Well, Jim or Mason, either one, do you have anything else you'd like to share tonight?
Those signs.
Well, I guess if there's no more questions and nothing else to share tonight, then we will just go ahead and sign off. And I thank you both for being here, Jim. I didn't even realize you were here. But I thank both of you.
I've been dealing with a nasty computer. So I'm sorry I was late.
Did mention that. You did mention that. Yeah, I remember that. I hope you get it all together.
Well, I did a major upgrade to an old e-machine, and I basically had to force feed it over a dozen upgrades to it, and then run a repair disk through it.
Yeah, that can be frustrating working with that kind of stuff, to say the least.
Not fun in my field.
Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be in mine either. Well, I thank you for showing up, and Mason, thank you so much for showing up too, and thank everyone that joined the call tonight, and especially if you mentioned anything, we appreciate it, and we ask you to join us again and bring a buddy the next time. Get more people involved.
Please do.
Bring some sheriff responses with you.
Sheriff responses. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you hear me laughing. Oh, golly.
Well, that's going to be something that we'll probably be able to share next week. We had a major letter go out to the 39 county sheriffs on Washington, and we'll see what bubbles up.
Yeah. Yeah, keep us informed. Well, I thank you. And do you have something else?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I thank everybody for being here, and we're going to go ahead and sign off, and we will see you again next Friday, same time. Have a good, blessed weekend.
View. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good call.